It captures people's imagination, I think, first and foremost. Architecture does affect people in ways that maybe architects understand only after a building's built.
People perceive architecture as simply being an object or a vessel within which people are housed. And that's clearly not what our sense of architecture is.
What the hell is an architect? What does an architect do? You know, what is the difference between an architect and a builder?
We concretize the world. We take human activities and we make manifest the physical structures that accommodate all manner of human activity.
The design studio is a place where individual action and individual creativity is measured very directly by the people around them.
When students are doing their job, they're shifting the focus of how we're talking and thinking about architecture.
Before you kind of come to architecture school, you sort of have this idea about objects and things like that, and then once you get here, it becomes all about space and all about occupation. And people sort of see a lot, architecture sort of sculpturally, and there's a point at which you stop dealing with objects, sort of things to stare at, and you start dealing with occupation.
I have a lot of friends who find it really hard to understand like my schedule here and how we function here and being here at strange hours of the day and working environment and what studio space is like.
And the way of working too,
Yeah.
that's really important.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And also the idea of being critiqued. Like being critiqued is
it's a foreign concept
really,
to a
really
business
foreign
student.
concept. Yeah.
The design studio is a place where students have to perform on their own. They have to create something from their own imagination. They have to create something in response to a set of problems that are either given to them or they have to even invent the problem.
There's no other place that you can get this kind of culture. And we've been together for 5 years, like the whole group, right? So we know everybody. Everybody knows everything.
It's like a second home. It's like a second community of people who are all struggling with the same questions.
Now, when I worked at home, there was so much lacking in the projects. There's nobody to bounce things off of. The inspiration is at a minimum when you're on your own.
Architecture education in US is one of the best because of this studio system. Always students hang around their own studio and talking, learning from others. That is the most important space for the education of architecture.
It's like they were hating on Robert Moses because he's so insensitive and he tore down neighborhoods and this, that, and the other. It's like, you know what? Get in a car, drive on the West Side Highway, take the Triborough Bridge into Manhattan. And then you will understand what he was trying to do. That visual procession in the automobile, spectacular.
No.
It is spectacular. You're thinking about it now because oh yeah, of course. Now we sit in traffic and we look at it. But back then, like the city had to make that transformation.
The great thing about architecture schools is it still takes place in a kind of space where people discuss the work together in a kind of both a personal way, a one-on-one way, and in a very public way. Ultimately, there's a kind of arena. There's a public arena where the work is discussed, where students can present themselves personally to other people, and show that they have a stake in the work and what they really think about the work. And that's extremely important, I think, to the development of an architectural project, because that's ultimately how architecture at certain points is really developed in the real world. And it's both an important lesson, but it's also a way in which, through that kind of intensely personal and human contact, that the work gets better.
I think a lot of the culture of studio happens at the most random times, like the most random hours.
I hope that, yes. I think the humor adds another level of energy, that you can bring. So you got moments where, we're all like joking around and we're doing the work and we're joking and we're vibing and whatever. Some guy will come in here like, well, that's why you guys don't get any work done, because you're always doing the shit. And you're like, the f*** you. Go and do your project then and live in your little world by yourself. Because the humor brings the interaction, and the interaction brings the energy, and the energy, creates an output between everybody, that we can all feed off of.
Don't forget, Dave, the boss.
Everyone stays late, everyone's hanging out and smoking cigarettes and drinking a lot of coffee and not really necessarily at your desk drawing or whatever. Architecture school is a really strange, specific environment. You can't possibly put that much work into something, like hours and hours on, one drawing or whatever, and make it be productive. You could tell an architect that it's due tomorrow and they'll put in the 12 hours and it might actually look the same as if they spent a whole week on it,
I should have gone home earlier than I did, because I just every 5 minutes I would take a little bit of glue and put it somewhere and then stop and figure out what the hell it is that I just did and then start over again, so.
I have this terrible thing that happens to me that I call the design high, where I can't fall asleep because I can't stop thinking about my project. And it's I get home and the whole walk home I'm exhausted. And as soon as I brush my teeth and wash my face and get into bed, I need to go back to studio.
Your health is kind of put on hold to make room for your ideas.
Architects are masochists in some ways. You're in there to all hours of the night. You're cutting yourself at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're rushing to the hospital to get stitched. I mean, you're putting these models together that you're tearing apart and then putting them together again. And then you're going through this iterative process of evaluation that is incredibly personal, but yet also very public. And you're constantly putting yourself on display, opening yourself up to attack and criticism. I mean, it's intense. Why would you subject yourself to that and put yourself through that if you didn't love it?
That's a conceptual mistake. The structural system does not separate between each unit. Usually the span of structure encompasses 3 or 4 units, or maybe more.
Well, I understand, but I don't see why that has to necessarily be the case, especially.
It necessarily be this case. It has to be this case.
I understand that I don't have to, but I think it's important for the,
It's
for
wrong.
the resolution.
It's fine. It's wrong.
Why is it wrong? Tell us why it's wrong.
Economically.
It's not wrong.
Systems.
We could critique his whole project in terms of the economy of
but you've done.
Basically, they're these walls, Dan. In terms of his diagram.
Yeah,
how
those
we
have to
like
be
that.
every other third wall is structural.
I mean, then that completely ruins the areas.
It does not ruin anything.
It wasn't necessary to have that conversation. The point was made, and then that's it. I understood the point, they understood or I thought he understood my point. I thought that should be the end of it, and then there were more important things to talk about and other people that had to talk to them, and still talking about it for 20 minutes.
One thing that I always have an issue with is students get so frustrated if they don't have a good critique. I think they misinterpret what a good critique is. I mean, by definition, it's a critique, it's a criticism.
So if you go into a critique and all the critics, all they can do is blow hot air up your ass and tell you how great the project looks, well, that's still not, to me, that's not a good critique. They didn't criticize anything. To me, a good criticism is if you can inspire enough thought based on what they see and what they hear. If it inspires enough thought, then they will criticize. Not criticize in the sense of attacking. They're going to criticize because whatever you showed them inspired enough thought that they have their own opinion about the thing now. That's a criticism.
I'm not gonna argue with you because I have a feeling it wouldn't be productive.
We could go on all night.
We could. I know that's not the point.
You
We're
would stop
trying
and
to
listen occasionally. We'd be able to find, some resting spot here where we're kind of talking about the same thing, and you allow us to help you.
The other thing I think that is sometimes very negative is the idea that the student should be trained to do a sales pitch in this jury process. I mean, I think that really probably the student should at first be silent, and the jurors should really start to ask questions about the drawings and try to understand the project in a more Socratic way, rather than this sales pitch followed by criticism.
If you're a smart architecture student, you're listening very closely because you're not only interested in how that work is coming out of you, but also how other people are seeing it.